Discover the incredible tale of Titans. Transformative lessons revealed from 12 amazing myths. Sarah's heart raced as she scanned the lengthy introduction on the first page of the old book. Dust motes danced in the faded light filtering through the attic window, illuminating the forgotten stories of strength and valor. The title read like a call to action, igniting a flicker of hope that had long been extinguished within her. But as quickly as that spark lit, it was doused by the looming reality. Her students needed more than just stories. They needed an escape from their struggles, which she couldn't fully offer. She hesitated, wrestling with the bittersweet memories of her grandmother, who sacrificed everything for the transformative power of education. Would she sacrifice her dreams, too? Wrapped in tension, Sarah paced the attic. The relentless demands of her life felt suffocating. With each step, her mind spiraled deeper into the chaos of her thoughts. She was a dedicated teacher, but the rigid curriculum felt like shackles. Her creativity stifled by high-stakes tests that valued rote memorization over real learning. The weight of her responsibilities bore down upon her. How could she inspire her students when she often struggled to keep them engaged? The daunting task of nurturing their potential felt impossible against the backdrop of dwindling support and funds in the tired halls of her school as the rain pelted the roof. Sarah's thoughts shifted to Alex, one of her students grappling with a family crisis that mirrored the mythology they were studying. Would her classroom become a sanctuary for him, or an additional burden? The thought twisted her stomach in knots. And yet, the myths beckoned, promising a way to connect the ancient with the contemporary, a thread to weave through their shared struggles. But how could she venture against the proud traditions of a school so obsessed with data and scores? The very essence of teaching felt endangered, teetering on an edge between innovation and conformity. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That moment, uncertainty gripped her like a vice. The more she thought about it, the clearer it became that the stagnant air of her classroom was suffocating not only her aspirations, but also those of her students. What if she challenged the rules, risked the approval of the administration? That thought sent a mix of exhilaration and fear coursing through her veins. She envisioned igniting her students' imaginations and building resilience within them, much like those tales of titans who faced insurmountable odds. But the tension escalated, the risk now visceral. Turning those ideas into reality felt like preparing to scale a mountain with little more than a tattered rope. Was this the legacy she wanted to leave behind? Would standing by her students mean sacrificing her potential for something more? The stories in the book flickered in her mind like shadows, whispering secrets of hope and bravery. Yet, as the storm raged outside, so did the storm within her, leaving her trapped between two worlds, the pursuit of her ambitions entwined with the love she had for her students. With each conflict bubbling inside her, the stakes only grew higher, a tempest brewing that would inevitably force her to make a choice. Remain a bystander or take a leap into the unknown. Would she have the courage to face the storm head-on? Or would she retreat back into the shadows of her grandmother's teachings? The truth lurked just out of reach, pulsing at the edge of her consciousness like the thunder, rumbling above. The following day unfolded with an air of anticipation mixed with trepidation. Sarah arrived at school with the old book tucked under her arm like a secret weapon, her heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of her resolve. The morning silence in the faculty lounge felt unusually heavy as teachers engaged in familiar banter, only to veer quickly into discussions of test results and the inevitable comparisons to district averages. Each phrase struck her like a discordant note. Reinforcing the dissonance, she felt a stark reminder that the battle for meaningful education seemed daunting. As Sarah moved to her classroom, she nailed down the last details of her lesson plan, which would integrate the rich tapestry of myths with the very real struggles her students endured. She had decided to frame their exploration of ancient tales through personal narratives, hoping that connecting the past to their present would empower her students, allowing them to see themselves as heroes in their own stories. Yet, the familiar knot in her stomach tightened as she questioned how this would be received. Would her administration see it as a worthwhile deviation or an unacceptable distraction? The first period began, and as Sarah greeted the students, their eyes seemed to reflect a melange of excitement and apathy. They were accustomed to the usual routine, but she sensed an undercurrent of curiosity this time. With each word she spoke, her confidence surged, as though the very act of embarking on this new path was becoming a transformative experience for her. When she introduced the idea of treating the myths as alive and relevant, a ripple of intrigue swept through the room. Today, we start with a hero's journey, she announced, her voice steady despite the tremors of uncertainty underneath. But instead of ancient Greeks or Romans, we'll explore heroes among us, each of you. As the period unfolded, Sarah guided her students to share moments in their lives where they felt they faced giants, overwhelming challenges that mirrored those ancient tales. Alex, the student she worried about most, hesitated at first, his eyes darting to the floor as he often did when discussing personal matters. But as the class listened to one another, he slowly opened up. His voice trembled as he recounted how his family struggles echoed the fights of the Titans, battling adversities that seemed insurmountable. Sometimes, it feels like no one sees the battle within, he admitted, vulnerability etched in every syllable. The response from her classmates was potent. Each story resonated, weaving a collective understanding that shifted the atmosphere. The classroom transformed into a sanctuary, a circle of strength where their experiences intertwined with the myths of old, awakening something powerful in Sarah. At that moment, she realized her courageous leap was igniting the very change she had quaked at the prospect of just hours before. However, the contrast to her earlier fears seeped into her bones as well. The chime of the bell signaled the end of the period, and the weight of realization hung heavy. They didn't just explore stories. They unearthed truths that challenged the status quo. Could the administration appreciate what had happened, or would they see only a departure from the prescribed curriculum? As she cleared the room, excitement mingled with dread. The shift she had orchestrated felt fragile, an oasis in a desert of conventionality. How long could she withstand the inevitable scrutiny? And if positive change began slipping away, how could she distance herself from the impending storm? Back in the safety of her empty classroom, Sarah dropped into a chair, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. She could feel that her journey was just beginning, not only for her students but for herself as well. Would she defend this newfound path against the school's administrative pressures? Or would she buckle under the weight of expectations, sacrificing not only the lessons she wished to impart but her identity as an educator? In the echoing silence, the storm brewed. Again in her mind, the time had come to confront the giants of the institution she had been part of for years. Would she step forward to claim her narrative, or retreat back to the shadows of conformity? The answer lay just ahead, cloaked in uncertainty, but filled with the promise of discovery. The morning bell resonated through the hallways, marking the start of another day. Yet, for Sarah, it carried a weight, a reminder that her choice to deviate from the norm had placed her at a crossroads. The echo of her students' stories lingered in her mind, and she could not help but replay Alex's words. Their shared narratives reverberated within her, leaving her stinging with both guilt and inspiration. How many more stories lay dormant, waiting to be unearthed? She resolved to dive deeper. Today would not just be another lesson, it would be stepping onto a sacred path. As she prepared her classroom, she stacked the chairs into a circle, inviting openness. In that configuration, she imagined her students might feel more connected, more willing to share the burdens they carried. Today, she declared as the last student took a seat, we'll delve deeper into your journeys. Myth is not solely a relic of the past. It lives in each of you. She caught herself clutching her notes. The familiar urge to revert to safety tugged at her, but she resisted. Let us turn this into an exploration of courage and vulnerability. The students exchanged skeptical glances, their faces painted with uncertainty. Undeterred, Sarah pressed on, encouraging them to name their own personal myths. She emphasized the importance of acknowledging the heroes they could become by confronting their challenges. Think about the moments when you felt strong, brave, or even small. What did you overcome? Sarah, a student known for her sarcastic remarks, broke the tension. Are you saying I'm supposed to write a myth for my English project? Her tone carried both mockery and curiosity. Exactly, Sarah responded, a smile creeping onto her face. Let's explore story as a form of empowerment. Think of this as your chance to rewrite the narrative. As stories flowed, Sarah felt that fragile yet powerful atmosphere surround them once more. They spoke of lost loved ones, poverty, and resilience vulnerability knitting them together. But buried within the stories was an unease. Alex hesitated as he approached a breakthrough, but his voice faltered under the weight of his emotions. It's harder than people think, he whispered, glancing around as if hoping to find affirmations hidden in their eyes. People think you just let go. But it's okay, Alex, Sarah interjected softly. Finding your voice takes time. Explore that part of your journey. In each moment, Sarah's own strength grew as she recognized the impact she was having. They were pushing against invisible barriers together. The more she encouraged her students, the more she began to confront her own fears, the aspiring educator battling against the institutional expectations that loomed like an anxious shadow. Yet, no sooner had exhilaration gripped her heart than she felt the heavy hand of doubt wrap around her throat. But what if this was all for naught? What if her attempts led not to acceptance but to scrutiny? Sarah could hear administrative whispers echoing critique and questions. Was she prepared for that inevitable encounter? At the end of the class, an unexpected exhaustion sank into her bones, the intensity of the dialogue leaving her breathless. The change she yearned for felt as though it was within reach, but so did the darkness of potential failure. As she sat in her now-still classroom, head in hands, she took a deep breath, feeling it begin to stir again. It would take more than just courage to challenge the framework of her career. It would demand a revelation of her own hidden strengths, skills she had not yet recognized and anxieties she needed to confront, especially as she stood to face the principal the next day, who was known for being a gatekeeper of tradition. The thought alone sent her heart racing. Would her dreams of transformative education lead to something greater, or push her further into despair? The next day would be pivotal. The time had come to confront the authority that shaped her world, to claim her narrative against all odds, and to see if her gamble could bear fruit or if it would cost her everything. The following day unfolded with a heavy blanket of anticipation. Sarah stood before her mirror. The reflection staring back amplified the internal conflict gnawing at her. Confidence eluded her, yet she knew that confronting the principal was essential not just for her career, but also to redefine her educational philosophy. She had taken the first brave steps with her students. Now it was time to challenge the institutional dogma that had stifled her spirit as she drove to school. The weight of her purpose settled atop her shoulders. Each red light felt like a momentary pause, her heart racing with the potential outcomes. What if the principal dismissed her concerns? What if he insisted on sticking to the traditional curriculum despite the stirrings of change she had ignited in her classroom? Navigating the hallways, Sarah was struck by the starkness of the environment. Students flocked in predictable clusters, the same faces reciting age-old routines. A part of her felt a kinship with them. They too were navigating uncharted waters. Entering the faculty lounge, she overheard snippets of conversation that made her gut twist: complaints about students, grumbles about lackluster lesson plans. Dread pooled in her stomach, reiterating the idea that educational reform was often met with resistance. This echoed her fears. "Good luck today, Sarah," a colleague called, oblivious to the storm brewing within her. "Thanks," she managed to reply, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. It felt as though she were on the precipice of a plunge that could either promote her development or break her spirit. The time finally arrived. Walking down the corridor to the principal's office, each step felt monumental, the air thick with tension. As she knocked and entered, she saw him seated at his desk, a figure of authority, arms crossed, watching her approach. Instantly, she recalled her students' stories, their unmasked emotions plastered all over her mind. It was as if they were with her, urging her to be brave. "Ms. Jordan," he greeted, eyebrows raised. "To what do I owe this visit?" "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Thompson," she started, her voice steady, yet her heart raced. "I wanted to discuss the current curriculum and explore some potential changes." "Changes?" He leaned back in his chair, skepticism etched across his features. "This is an established program. It's worked for years. Are you suggesting we throw that away?" The weight of his dismissal pressed heavily on her, but she pressed on. "I believe the students would benefit from a more inclusive approach, incorporating their voices and experiences. They have stories to tell." His glasses slipped down his nose as he scrutinized her. "And those stories can be enlightening, but education also requires structure and rigor. What do you think will happen if we deviate?" She felt the familiar punch of anxiety, but armed with the strength cultivated in her classroom, she countered, "Rigor does not mean stifling creativity. Imagine a learning environment where students connect with the material. It won't just benefit them now, but it could prepare them for a world that values empathy and innovation." A gleam of recognition flickered across his face, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. "You know how parents feel about these matters. They want results and grades. Can you guarantee me that this—" He paused, gesturing at her impassioned presence, "will translate into success?" Sarah inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the future pressing against her temples. "I cannot guarantee outcomes, but I can promise growth. A student personally invested in their learning is a student who thrives." For what felt like an eternity, the room hung in silence, the potential for upheaval churning between them. As she stood there, a moment of profound realization dawned on her. Power was not just wielded from a desk. It surged from the courage to advocate for change. "Think about it, Mr. Thompson," she concluded, her voice descending into a whisper, unsure yet unyielding. "This is an opportunity to lead by example, to inspire a generation." His jaw tightened, and she could see the gears turning. It was a small victory just to be heard, yet anxiety swelled within her. As the tension danced, she realized that this discussion was merely the beginning. Stepping back into the hallway after their exchange, uncertainty coiled tightly in her chest. She had taken a leap, but would it be enough to carve a new path? What awaited her on the other side of this confrontation? Suddenly, her phone buzzed, vibrating like a live wire in her pocket. A studentess message flashed before her. "Hey, got something to share. Can we talk after class?" Curiosity crept in, mingling with the earlier tension. What kind of revelation awaited her now? The classroom buzzed with a low hum as Sarah settled into her role as facilitator, the morning's heavy encounter still fresh in her mind. Students filed in, their chatter and laughter a stark contrast to the weight of the conversation she had just endured. As she observed them, she couldn't help but wonder if her efforts would ever materialize into meaningful changes. "All right, everyone, let's take our seats," she called out, her voice carrying a warmth she hoped would bridge the earlier turbulence. As they settled, she felt a flicker of determination ignite anew. Perhaps the real test of change began here, amidst the laughter and learning, cultivating a richer environment where curiosity thrived. She initiated the day's lesson with a simple question: "What does success look like to you?" The responses poured in, lively and varied, students speaking candidly about dreams, aspirations, and fears. Their honesty was a balm to her frayed nerves. As hands shot up and voices intermingled, Sarah took mental notes, recognizing patterns that hinted at a larger narrative. They spoke of success as grades, trophies, and praise, yet there were glimpses of deeper understanding, personal growth, resilience, and the relationships they nurtured. She felt an urge to capture this moment, to connect it back to her discussion with Mr. Thompson. She began, tilting her head to engage their thoughts more deeply. While grades are important, there are other types of success too. Can we think of a time when you faced a challenge and grew from it? Their brows furrowed as they dug into their memories, exchanging stories of perseverance and the small victories they had achieved. As Sarah listened, she sensed that this particular lesson was becoming a cornerstone for the environment she wished to cultivate. Encouraged by their engagement, she seized an opportunity. What if we redefine success for ourselves as a class? What if we say that every time we learn together, whether through mistakes or triumphs, we are successful? Excited murmurs rippled through the room. She could see that they were tasting the concept, chewing it over like an intriguing morsel. Her heart swelled at their curiosity, yet a voice of skepticism echoed in her mind. How long could she maintain this newfound enthusiasm? Would it be enough to convince Mr. Thompson of the value in her approach? Post-class, the wave of adrenaline surged again as her phone buzzed incessantly. She pulled it out, heart quickening. It was another message from the same student. Can we meet now? It's about something important. Dread slipped through her as she considered the downside of her double-edged commitment to change. What if the student revealed complications instead of insights? Sarah's mind raced, recalling the fraught conversations she had overheard in the faculty lounge earlier. Still, she felt compelled to listen. After the final bell, she found a quiet corner in an empty classroom. The familiar scent of chalk and paper seemed to bolster her resolve as she prepared for whatever awaited her. When the door creaked open, a visibly shaken student entered. Sarah's heart sank. Was this a setback brewing from their experience together? "Hey," Sarah greeted gently, offering an encouraging smile. "You said you had something important to share?" The student fidgeted for a moment, a flash of determination sparking through the hesitation. "I don't know how to say this, but I think my story could help our class." They finally managed, eyes darting with both apprehension and a glimmer of hope. A thrill of anticipation coursed through Sarah. Perhaps this was what she had been waiting for. Here was the potential for transformation, both for the student and the entire class. "What do you mean?" She pressed gently, bracing herself for the intricate layers of their story. This was a chance to unearth a powerful narrative, one that could strengthen her case with Mr. Thompson and redefine the very essence of learning. As the student began to unfold their tale, Sarah leaned in, both hopeful and anxious. Each word was a step into uncharted territory. Would it resonate with the change she envisioned, or would the complexities entangle her further? The room felt charged, the unknown stretching before them like a vast ocean, waiting to be explored. Yet one question loomed large in her mind: how far was she willing to go to make this change happen? As the student took a deep breath and began to speak, Sarah's curiosity turned into a palpable urgency. The words flowed, hesitant yet filled with a quiet intensity, shedding light on a problem that had lingered beneath the surface of their classroom. A struggle with anxiety and feelings of isolation that ran deeper than many understood. Each sentence peeled back layers of vulnerability, revealing a landscape of inner battles fought silently. "I thought I was alone," the student admitted, voice trembling slightly. "But then I realized, everyone suffers in silence. It's like we're all wearing masks." Sarah felt the weight of that truth settle heavily between them. In a flash, all her doubts about her abilities as a facilitator surged to the forefront. Could she help her students truly understand and embrace the power of their experiences? She felt the pressing need to guide the student and, by extension, the whole class into a more profound conversation about resilience. "What if we shared this in class?" Sarah suggested carefully. "You could show everyone they're not alone. That vulnerability can be a strength." The student hesitated, their eyes filling with uncertainty. "What if people judge me? What if they don't understand?" In that moment, Sarah recognized a fundamental truth about her role. It wasn't just about passing down knowledge. It was about fostering a safe space for difficult conversations and emotional growth. She remembered her own trepidation when confronting her fears. "We'll create a safe atmosphere, I promise. And it will help you too, trust me." After a brief pause, the student's shoulders lowered, releasing some of the tension. "Okay, I'll do it." With that commitment, a spark of change ignited within Sarah. She gathered her thoughts and outlined a plan. She envisioned a class where students could share their stories without fear, thus weaving a tapestry of experiences that would help them redefine their understanding of success, not just in grades, but in personal growth. It dawned on her then, this was her chance to cultivate an environment rooted in empathy and resilience. As Sarah walked back to her desk, the reality of her mission resonated strongly within her. Yet along with her determination, A new threat lurked at the edges of her confidence, Mr. Thompson. She recalled their previous conversations. He had expressed doubts about her unconventional teaching style, emphasizing his belief in stricter, more traditional methods. She could already envision his criticisms. Would he understand that emotional learning was just as crucial as academic success? She resolved to frame her meeting with Mr. Thompson as a collaboration. If she could present the student's story as a powerful case study, perhaps he might see the benefits of her approach. It would be challenging, but Sarah sensed this was a turning point, one that could redefine the educational atmosphere of their entire school. That evening, she crafted notes carefully, reminding herself of their burgeoning success in the previous class discussions and the enthusiasm that had emerged. The student's courage deserved to be highlighted not just as a standalone story, but as a component of a larger shift that could encapsulate how they all grew together. As darkness encroached and her thoughts raced, preparing her for the next day's catch with Mr. Thompson, Sarah realized the battle ahead was not just institutional. It was deeply personal. Could she be the advocate her students needed? She lay in bed, restlessly contemplating her next steps. Doubt persisted, yet determination intertwined with hope. Was she ready to confront the systemic challenges within the educational structure that formed around her? That question preoccupied her thoughts, teasing the edges of her confidence. Tomorrow loomed on the horizon, a day that could either cement her efforts or introduce new obstacles. But one thing was certain. She would give voice to the students' experiences, channeling their courage into a movement toward change. And then a fresh notion sparked. What if this was not just about her students? What if there were lessons in their vulnerabilities meant for her own growth as well? With that thought lingering, she drifted into a restless sleep, a quiet resolve settling in her bones. Tomorrow would be the day she stepped off the precipice to face her own fears. As dawn broke, Sarah awoke, knowing that a confrontation with Mr. Thompson awaited her. The moment of truth regarding her beliefs and aspirations was fast approaching, and with it, the undeniable tension of realization the time had come to face not only the faculty but also her own limitations. As the first light of morning crept through her window, painting her room in soft hues of gold, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. She had envisioned this day countless times, yet it remained dauntingly real. The echoes of the student's story lingered in her mind, the belief that vulnerability could lead to connection pushing her forward. She needed that belief to resound not only in her classroom but also within the austere walls of the administration. The day unfurled like a tightly wound coil, each tick of the clock tightening the pressure in her chest. After an uneventful morning of routine classes, she stood in anticipation outside Mr. Thompson's office, rehearsing her speech in her mind. She was preparing for battle, a confrontation not just against his authority, but against the ingrained perceptions of education she had accepted for far too long. When he finally emerged, she felt his glance pierce her resolve. "Sarah, you wanted to talk?" His tone was neutral, but the hint of skepticism hovered between them. "Yes, Mr. Thompson," she replied, forcing confidence into her voice. "I'd like to discuss an approach I'm developing for the class." As they settled into the office, Sarah mirrored the clean lines of the room, trying to compose her thoughts. "I believe we need to focus on emotional learning alongside academic success. I have a student who has been open about their struggles with anxiety and isolation. I want to frame this dialogue as part of our curriculum." Mr. Thompson leaned back, crossing his arms. "Emotional learning? While I appreciate your initiative, our priority must remain excellence in academics, Sarah. Students can't learn to express their feelings when they're not meeting basic educational standards." Doubt seeped into her confidence, but Sarah reminded herself of the conversations from the previous day. But what if addressing their emotional challenges can enhance their academic performance? I've seen it already how sharing personal stories fosters connection and collaboration. This could lead to greater resilience and engagement. Mr. Thompson frowned. A clear barrier formed. "Sarah, education isn't therapy. We can't sacrifice the curriculum for anecdotes. You have to understand, these methods, they're not what we've agreed upon." His words punctuated her thoughts like a hammer striking steel. What did he know of academic achievement devoid of emotional understanding? A teacher's task wasn't merely to deliver knowledge but to cultivate minds capable of resilience. But isn't it our responsibility to prepare them for life? The world they face isn't only made of grades. His expression softened slightly, then hardened again. Your intentions are noble, but I fear this soft approach will lead to failure. What will you tell the parents when their children struggle with math because we spent too much time on sharing feelings? Sarah inhaled sharply, feeling the tight coil of tension in her stomach twist. The fight within her escalated. How could he not see the connection? If we ignore the emotional weight they carry, they will struggle regardless. Preparing them means equipping them with tools they need for holistic success, not just the academic. Silence settled between them, thick like fog. For a moment, Sarah saw glimpses of her own battles reflected in his gaze, a man struggling to maintain control amid a world transforming beyond his understanding. And perhaps she realized, could she teach him, even as she fought for her students? Let me run a pilot program, she offered. Her voice quivered slightly but was firm. We can assess the students' performance and then evaluate whether this approach benefits them academically. If it fails, I will fall on my sword. Mr. Thompson's brow furrowed, clearly weighing her words. The tension crackled with unresolved potential. Despite his doubts, this could be a moment of revelation for him, for her, and for the students. Fine, Sarah. You have 1 semester. Prove your method, but I want regular check-ins. Don't think I'll let you sidestep the curriculum. Relief surged through her, intertwining with the tension of impending responsibility. She had gained a precious opportunity, but another realization dawned. She hadn't just won a small battle. She ignited the potential for bigger change. Yet as fresh anxiety bubbled within her, she wondered, would she be able to rise to the challenge? As she left his office, Sarah felt the unknown stretch before her like a tantalizing horizon. There would be setbacks, conflicts, and the challenge of proving herself in a world that felt constricting. But this was just the beginning. If she could unlock the potential within her students, what might she discover about herself in the process? A greater question settled in her mind, daunting yet electrifying. What transformations awaited her on this uncharted path? Would she be able to balance her own fears with the responsibility of facilitating change? The first day of her pilot program arrived, and Sarah's heart raced at the intersection of hope and trepidation. Her classroom felt different, charged with unspoken expectations, hanging like a thick fog in the early morning air. Students filed in, their faces a mosaic of curiosity and skepticism. Would they embrace this emotional learning she so fiercely believed in? Or would they push back like the walls of the administration? Good morning, everyone, she began, her voice slightly wavering. Today we're starting something new. She caught the eyes of a few students, noticing a blend of intrigue and fear reflected back at her. We'll be exploring not just our subjects, but how our emotions influence our learning and interactions. The chatter amongst the students fluctuated, some murmuring, others shifting in their seats. Sarah felt a sudden flash of uncertainty. What if they had no interest in opening up? What if this was just another lesson that went flat? But no. She had a purpose, ignited by the belief that vulnerability could build connection. For their opening activity, Sarah presented a simple question on the board. What does it mean to feel safe? On cue, several hands shot up. The initial reactions were mundane: safety as a physical state, something they associated with home or absence of danger. Yet as she prompted them to delve deeper, those answers began to unfurl like petals on a flower. Articulate voices explored more personal aspects, revealing fears of judgment and the anxiety that plagued their minds during tests and social interactions. Encouraged by their engagement, Sarah felt a flicker of resilience within herself. They were opening up, creating a window for dialogue that she had long desired. She enthusiastically backed their insights, validating their feelings, fostering an environment wherein they started to believe it was okay to be vulnerable. Yet, as days wore on, moments of challenge crept into the serene landscape of her dream. Some students resisted the process, dismissing it as lame. Caught in their hesitations, Sarah wrestled with the authenticity of her endeavors. Their reluctance exposed her insecurities, cracking her confidence like fragile glass. Who was she to push them into discomfort? A teacher with limited experience, barely starting her own journey of change. Midway through the semester, during a check-in with Mr. Thompson, she felt the weight of his skepticism creeping back into her mind. I hope you're preparing data, Sarah. I'm not convinced this is the way to go. Anecdotes 1T keep this system afloat, he had stated, eyebrows knit in judgment. Each session with him felt like walking a tightrope, balanced precariously between her vision and his demands. Further compounding her worries, her anxious student, Alex, whose journey had kicked off her passion for emotional learning, began to retreat. His once eager contributions in class turned into silence. Frustration bubbled up inside Sarah, not just about Alex, but about her perceived failure to inspire change. What could she do to reach him? Did she have the resilience to face this turn of events, to encourage him in a way her experience had never equipped her for? As she sat in her car, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex's mother, expressing concern over his waning enthusiasm at school. The heart of her mission felt at risk. What transformations did she want to foster, and what was slipping through her fingers? The stakes were rising, but was she condensing her focus too narrowly on results? In that moment of reflection, Sarah faced a crossroads. This was more than a teaching pilot. It was an exploration of herself. Could overcoming her fear of failure illuminate the path forward? As she embarked on her next class, Sarah understood that she was not merely facilitating learning but also learning herself. The challenge to adapt and connect deeply, both with her students and her mission, lay before her. And perhaps most importantly, had she been focusing on the right metrics of success? As she looked at the faces before her, a burning question ignited inside, demanding resolution. Would she redefine what educational success truly meant? And if so, how could she rally her students, starting from her own rebirth? As Sarah entered the classroom that next day, a palpable sense of determination coursed through her veins. She had spent the previous night mulling over her previous missteps and the weight that Alex's silence had laid on her shoulders. Knowledge unfurled in her mind, a realization dawning. Her approach couldn't simply rest on metrics or outcomes. It had to emerge from genuine connection and shared experiences. Today, she said, drawing the students' attention, we're going to revisit the question about safety, but from a different angle. Safety isn't just a place. Sometimes it's about the people we surround ourselves with. She watched them digest her words, seeing both skepticism and curiosity bloom. With newfound resolve, Sarah decided to shift the focus of their emotional learning from merely defining feelings to initiating real stories. She encouraged her students to bring in personal narratives, triumphs, failures, or moments of vulnerability. We can't just understand our feelings. We need to share them. They're not just ours. They belong to everyone who listens, she urged. Hands hesitated before rising, but then, like strings pulled taut, the air thickened with the weight of revelations. One student, Jenna, shared a story about not making the cheerleading team, how it shattered her confidence. Another, Max, revealed his fear of public speaking, drawing nervous laughter from his peers that quickly morphed into compassion. As they spoke, Sarah noticed the walls of indifference beginning to tremble, bits of camaraderie seeping through the cracks. In that moment, Sarah saw glimpses of vulnerability, a stark contrast to the usual bravado and dismissive remarks. Each story was a thread weaving itself into the fabric of their collective experience. But as they embraced this deeper connection, her heart tremored with underlying doubts. Was this a safe space? Were her attempts merely a band-aid over an entrenched culture of apathy within their school? With Mr. Thompson's voice echoing in her mind, she felt the gravitational pull of pragmatism and the weight of preconceived notions about educational success. What if the test scores faltered because of this dedication to emotional learning? Would her career become collateral damage in pursuit of something deeper? Sarah's resolve wavered as she caught a glimpse of Alex at the corner of the classroom. His gaze flitted between his peers, hesitant yet seeking. The thought of him slipping further into isolation tightened her chest. This isn't just about creating an emotional dialogue. It was about him, about Matt, and all the others. This was personal. In the following days, embedded within the narratives that unfolded across her classroom walls, a profound realization began to crystallize. She introduced one-on-one check-ins, creating moments carved out for each student, especially Alex. But those encounters were not merely transactional. Rather, they morphed into explorations of trust and understanding. Conversations became a dance, each step revealing hidden strengths. With Alex, she quickly discovered he was gifted at drawing. "Let your art speak for you, Alex," she encouraged during one session, her fear of his retreat transforming into a strategy that placed value on his untapped talents. She could see the shift. His eyes lit as he opened up in ways she had yet to witness. However, each small victory pushed back against an internal clock ticking louder with expectations. In the quiet hours of the night, Sarah wrestled with self-doubt, the shadows stretching over her ambitions. Was authentic connection enough to both engage Alex and satisfy the administrative measures looming over her? As she prepared a presentation for the next staff meeting to showcase her pilot's progress, doubt gnawed at her, clawing at the edges of her optimism. It wasn't about compiling data. It was about transforming lives. Yet what kind of change would be recognized? As she sat surrounded by her chaotic thoughts, a new, terrifying resolution emerged. What if she decided to present her failures to highlight the nascent successes? This was a risk, a personal expose of her journey, and with that revelation came a fresh surge of determination. She needed to confront not just her own fears but the perceptions that defined education within that space. The time had come to face not just Alex's transformation, but her own. Would embracing vulnerability open doors to deeper learning? Or was it a path fraught with unforeseen consequences? As she organized her notes, anticipation crackled in the air, pushing her toward an ultimatum that would shift the narrative. What would she choose to reveal about her journey to her colleagues? And more importantly, what transformations awaited her students if she laid herself bare? With the first warm light of dawn filtering through her window, Sarah awoke, feeling both excited and apprehensive about the day ahead. It was the day of the staff meeting, where she would share the evolution of her pilot program. The blend of vulnerability and anticipation settled over her like a second skin. She had spent countless hours reflecting on her journey, sifting through its complexities, and now it was time to take a definitive stand. As she dressed, her mind drifted to her students, especially Alex, and the brave narratives they had woven together. Their stories had ignited a passion within her to not only teach but to also advocate for a new frequency of engagement within education. This meeting would be their moment, too, a chance to illuminate the importance of emotional connections in learning. Arriving at the school, the familiar air of skepticism mingled with her unease. Staff members shuffled through the hallways, their faces a mix of preoccupied determination and passive indifference. She entered the meeting room, her heart pounding, the weight of their expectations heavy on her shoulders. As she stood before her colleagues, anticipation rippling through the room, she began with their stories. She highlighted Alex's journey toward confidence through art, Jenna's newfound determination after not making the cheerleading team, and the way these experiences had fostered a safe space that invited vulnerability. Today, I want to share not just our successes but our struggles, the moments when our approach felt daunting and the traditional framework of education seemed stifling. She started, her voice steadying with regained confidence. As she narrated both the fears and the triumphs, she observed a flicker of recognition in the eyes of her peers, a resonance building between them. Some may think that emotional learning detracts from academics. I challenge that notion. Emotions are not obstacles, but scaffolding for deeper engagement. While some of my methods may lack conventional metrics, they cultivate resilience, an essential skill for any future workplace, she declared, her heart racing with conviction. In each word, she proudly showcased an array of student artwork, their expressions of trials transformed into creativity. Gradually, the room shifted from scrutiny to curiosity. Sarah could see colleagues perking up, interest ignited by her authenticity. They began to ask questions, engaging in a dialogue that allowed her to showcase the potency of emotional learning framed with the backbone of academic success. The discussions that followed were rich, filled with insights, concerns, and fresh perspectives, weaving into a tapestry of support rather than isolation. She felt the power of collective acknowledgement of a shared struggle. The rigid structures that had long been part of their educational foundation were beginning to fracture. As the meeting drew to a close, Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the room. "I've been skeptical, but I've seen your passion, Sarah, and I can't overlook the positive changes. If we're open to reevaluating our protocol, we might just be able to create a compelling new model for learning." Her heart swelled with hope and validation. The openness to transformation she had long desired was finally beginning to crystallize. It struck her the giants she had feared were not impenetrable at all. They were merely reflections of the challenges all educators faced. After the meeting, Sarah floated out of the room, adrenaline coursing through her as she texted Alex. "We did it. Your story matters." As she walked through the corridors, she reveled in the sense of importance that radiated from her interactions with students and staff alike. There had been a shift that had begun with her hungry desire to redefine education. Weeks passed, and their stories began echoing throughout the school. Her students convened to share their narratives, creating a ripple effect of transparency and support among their peers. Parents engaged with her in ways she hadn't anticipated, investing in conversations about mental health and wellness. The classroom transformed into a sanctuary of curiosity where every student felt encouraged to flourish. Sarah stood taller each day, bolstered by her established recognition as a catalyst for change. She had conquered her fear of voicing her opinions and pushing against the status quo. In the distance, she could hear the whispers of triumph echoing through the hallways. Her success was not framed solely by grades or test scores, but rather by the resilience her students exhibited, the vulnerability they embraced, and the connections they formed. She had not only transformed her classroom but had initiated a shift within her entire school community. With each passing day, Sarah embraced the quiet confidence that came with embodying her values, a confidence that thrived in the wake of connection, empathy, and creativity. She had proved to herself that true success doesn't lie in conventional definitions, but rather blooms from daring to be vulnerable, speak your truth, and foster an environment where everyone can rise. Filled with gratitude, she now looked towards the future, aware that this journey was only the beginning. Her personal achievement was greater than she had ever envisioned, and as she stepped forward, her heart brimmed with excitement for the transformations yet to come. To all those inspired by stories of transformation and growth, this is your moment to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because every click matters. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this inspiring conclusion. You need to show your support for these impactful stories.